Hello and welcome back to my channel. It's a very sunny Saturday morning here in Levenshume, and I have been out in the garden. I'm back indoors now for a bit to record hopefully a quick video for you, not too long. I thought I'd show you some shelves first of all. That's what people do, isn't it? A bookshelf tour. Here's look, I've sorted out my Doctor Who New Adventures from Virgin books in the 90s. I think that's all of them. I don't have a complete set, I never did. And puffins and horror. My rainbow shelves have gone awry, unfortunately, through being mucked around and reading, basically, taking things down. I'm quite pleased with how tidy all of these shelves are. And these have turned into kind of 1990s shelves. And more Doctor Who. There's a whole lot of Target books from the 70s. There's Guy N. Smith. There's Little House on the Prairie, Star Trek, Mary Poppins, Grange Hill, and the Wombles. And here's the Hardy Boys. At the back there's Lemony Snicket in a nice edition that Jeremy got me for my birthday last year. That box set. I'm not sure why they're at the back there. And here's things from this year. Just the favourite things from this year so far. I've dumped several things that didn't live up to the promise. Anyway, there's a quick bookshelf tour of that side of the room. This side of the room is marvellously tidy. Look at those hardbacks, all stacked up. And the things, again, that I reach for, as I say, the cartoon books, the picture books, and the poetry. And annuals and picture books down here. And through there, double stack layers of novels, mostly, going back over the last 30 years, just the favourites. And this is the bookcase. If you can see this, but it goes all the way back down there. That contains all the things I want to read. And that thing there, that heap, those heaps and heaps are books I've written. And these are picture books. That's a really whistle-stop tour of the whole room. It's ridiculous, really. This is just a catching up Saturday morning thing. I did get some post this morning. This is the novel by my friend Stuart Douglas, who I've known for years and years, probably 17, 18 years. And he's one of my best friends. He lives in Edinburgh. And this is he's written 5, I believe. Yeah, it's 5 Sherlock Holmes books for Titan. And he's known for being a pitch-perfect Holmes pasticheur. He just gets that world perfectly. And I've got all of those. This is his first original novel, as it were, with his own characters. Stuart also runs Obverse Press in Edinburgh, which exists to publish all kinds of strange things. Lots of science fiction, lots of Iris Wildthyme, and the Black Archive, non-fiction books about Doctor Who. This is his murder mystery, and it's out, it's Death at the Dress Rehearsal, and it's the first in the, what do they call them, Lowe and Le Breton mystery series. I've been through various versions of this over the years, and it's amazing to actually be holding a finished copy. I'm just looking at the other people he got quotes from. Oh yes. See my quotes on the back. Not that these things are important. Right, I'll read you the blurb. In 1970, while on a location shoot in Shropshire for the down-market BBC sitcom Flog It and Leg It, ageing actor Edward Lowe, a short, stocky northerner with a receding headline and bad eyesight, who plays the pompous and officious lead, a role based on himself, stumbles across the body of a young woman apparently the victim of a tragic drowning accident. But there's something about her death that rings the faintest of bells in his head, and convinced the woman has been murdered, he enlists the help of his laid-back, upper-class co-star, John Le Breton, a man for whom raising a wry eyebrow is a bit much of an effort, to investigate further. Crossing the country back and back again during gaps in the filming, the two elderly thespians make use of their wildly contrasting personalities and skill sets to uncover both a series of murders in the modern day and links to another unfortunate death during World War II. But as the body count mounts and a pattern to the killings begins to emerge, can Edward and John put their differences aside to save the innocent victims of a serial killer and be ready for when the cameras start rolling? I think I'm going to stand my... I can't. I'm going to have to carry on holding rather awkwardly this tripod thing. I'm going to read you the opening. This is my method. Oh, it's nicely signed to me. Very nice. I'm going to read the opening. This is the way as I said the other day, you read the blurb, you read the first couple of paragraphs, and then you read a bit at random from the middle, and that's how you know you're going to like something. So this is the prologue. The taste of blood in her mouth reminded her of childhood, a fall from a swing and a sharp blow to her chin which had rattled her infant teeth. Then her father had caught her up in his arms and carried her away, cleaned her up and given her ice cream and orange juice, but there would be no such rescue this time. Instead, she stumbled through the thick gorse, alone and aware of the closeness of her attacker, only a few yards behind her. She could hear breathing at her heels and a soft voice calling her name. "Give up, Alice. There's nowhere to go." Whether that was true or not, she didn't know. She could only hope she would come to a road, that a car would pass, and miraculously she'd be saved. When she'd fled from the car park away from the darkness, she'd been heading uphill, and now she crested a small peak and, to her delight, made out a faint glow 100 yards or so ahead. She risked a glance back, but the blackness of the countryside was so complete that she could see nothing, only hear the steady tread of someone close behind her, in no hurry to catch up. The certainty in that tread, the conviction that a capture was inevitable, was almost enough to break her, but instead she forced herself to increase speed, tripping and half falling as she pressed onwards, wondering if she might somehow fashion a weapon from something lying about, anything to gain enough time to reach the lights. It's a great start. Right, I'm going to pick a paragraph from somewhere in the middle, just to give you a flavour. It's probably really, that doesn't matter. It's really unfair to do this. It'll all be good. Bet you. Okay, this is right from the middle. His cigarette was almost finished, and he looked around for an ashtray. There were none visible nearby, and it seemed disrespectful to go back into the bedroom merely to dispose of a cigarette end. John was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, reaching into a high cupboard, so he slid past him and crossed to the sink, where he nipped off the burning head of the cigarette with his thumbnail. He turned on the tap and heard the fizzle as the water hit the burning cinder of tobacco, then watched as it swirled away down the plug hole. He pulled open the door of the cupboard underneath the sink. As he'd expected in such a small flat, no space was wasted, and a plastic bin had been screwed to the back of the door. He lifted the lid and dropped the wet dog end into the bag, where it nestled on top of hard black banana peels and desiccated tea bags. Wasn't it strange to have no other ashtrays, he wondered suddenly, and felt an unexpected tingle. Had he spotted something everyone else had missed? But perhaps someone had tidied them away. No, the caretaker woman had said nothing had been touched. So where were they all then? He kept a minimum of 2 in every room at home, even in the little toilet under the stairs. Who ever heard of a smoker with only a single ashtray? "Are you going to turn off that water?" John's voice cut across his thoughts, startling him. He looked dumbly down at the still swirling tap water for a moment, then twisted it off sharply. Sorry, miles away, he said, already turning towards the kitchen door. He heard the sound of a cupboard being closed behind him and an exaggerated sigh, but he had other, more important things on his mind. The ashtray in the bedroom was a square of faux crystal with serrated glass edges, divided at each corner by a small, shallow indentation in which a burning cigarette might be laid. The whole of the crystal base was spotlessly clean, as though it had recently been washed. Which begged the question, of course, when had that happened? And where were the cigarette ends which must have been in it when it was dirty? He returned to the sitting room and called through to the kitchen. You haven't come across any ashtrays, have you, John? Or any bins other than the one under the sink? He thought there might be protests, but if there were, they were quiet enough that he couldn't hear them. Not so far, John replied, popping his head around the doorframe, but I've still a few places to check. Could you take a look and see what exactly is in the kitchen bin? John raised an eyebrow. I do wish I'd thought to bring a pair of gloves, he sighed, but he returned to the kitchen without comment. I could go on reading and reading. I love the meticulousness of all that kind of detective-y work and examining little tiny things like the indentations of the ashtray. Anyway, I think it's out quite soon. If it's not out already, you can pre-order on Amazon or the Titan website. So Death at the Dress Rehearsal, the first in a series by Stuart Douglas. I love getting book post. What else? I'm going to sit outside and finish reading my book, which I've left out in the garden. Joanna Toy, the Little Penguin Bookshop, this wartime saga that I'm loving. I've got about 100 pages to go on that. There's a bit where she talks about the character, our lead character, learning to carry 3 books with her wherever she goes because of the air raids. And sometimes, she's spending 12 hours sitting on a bench as the bombs fall over London and they can hear them in the town where they live. And she talks about the character sitting through this terrible air raid as the docks are bombed. And I think it said that the old woman next to her smelled of violets, and there was a man with terrible BO sitting on the other side, and she had to sit still for 12 hours. So she's learned to have 3 books in her bag, and there's an old favourite and a new book by somebody she knows she's going to like because she's liked their other books, and then something challenging that she feels she really wants to read that's new. And so she's never without company or reassurance in even the most terrifying moments. And I thought that really stood out to me as being a good plan, having 3 books with you all the time. So I might have to adopt that. It's a really good saga. It's properly heart-wrenching, to do with people being missing in action, pilots mostly. So I'm enjoying that, and I think I'm going to move on to possibly this, which I've been waiting to read, Travis Baldry, maybe, or I might stick with the sagas theme. But then, as you know, I keep digging out things from the past when I go through these shelves and finding things that I really want to reread. Anyway, I'm going to stop soon. One of the things I wanted to say was thank you for all your questions. I posted a video last night or the night before, which was my 3-month anniversary of doing these every single day. I can't promise I'm going to carry on doing them every single day, but I do have a lot of enthusiasm for doing these videos. Your comments have been really lovely. People who have enjoyed just listening to me ramble on, and the message I'm getting a lot when I asked about what kind of videos would you like to see from me is don't change it, just carry on doing this mix of stuff and doing it in the unsophisticated low-tech way that I do. I've even stopped using a microphone. I just hold my camera and talk to you for 20 minutes at a time, with no edits and no fancy stuff. Although I would like to try some fancy stuff. I'd like to go and do a bookshop tour and have music over the top. all that stuff. But mostly what I'm hearing is just carry on talking. People, I think, just like me burbling on in the background, maybe. It's nice when people say they find my voice soothing. I think that's nice. That's a nice compliment. I do have a huge number of questions from people, and I might devote an episode or two to going through those. There's lots and lots of very specific questions. Do I own any first edition books in hardback or paperback? Well, yes. And so I've got to prepare for that and dig some out. I think I'll limit myself to ones that I really love. And none of them are mint condition books because everything is red. And even the first edition signed hardbacks I've got have been read into just about smithereens, and that's how it should be. I once went to somebody's house party during a book festival in the countryside, and this fella had the most amazing library that he showed people, and everything in it was first editions and hardbacks, and he'd covered them all in some kind of lamination, some kind of polythene, and they were never touched. And they looked very impressive. He must have spent a fortune, but it was a bit like watching animals in the zoo who'd been covered in polythene or cling film and had been told not to move or set in cages and they couldn't scamper around. So it was a bit frightening as well. I like books that have been read. I like books that can be used still. I've learnt my lesson in lending books out to people. I won't do that because they don't come back. But I won't keep them in polythene. The funny thing about this fellow was he liked everything absolutely pristine, and he bought new books from people at the festival. And he was the organizer. And I remember lovely Leslie Glaister. It was the first time I met her. And there was a whole bunch of nice people at this festival, actually. And she had a new novel out at that point, The Private Parts of Women, it was called, a kind of gothic thriller. This must have been 96 or something. And she came out of the bathroom at this festival. And I remember she just washed her hands and she was kind of shaking them dry. And this bloke presented her with a copy of her new hardback and of his special fountain pen, probably the fanciest fountain pen in the world, and invited her to sign her book for him, which she did. She was flattered, like we all were, and unfortunately her hands went completely dry. So as she wrote her best wishes and her signature, her autograph, a splotch of water fell on the page and blemished the autograph, and he was livid. And he had to go off, I've got to buy another copy now, and off he stomped to buy another one. And I just remember her going, it's not we. It's just water, I've washed my hands. So people can be too precious about these kinds of things, I think. I think he even asked me to sign a copy of my first novel in hardback, which had just come out. I was a very junior member of this particular festival. I slept on somebody's settee, and they didn't put me up anywhere, just on somebody's settee. But it was a very nice festival. I remember that very drunken party, house party. Beryl Bainbridge had written, I think, half of Every Man for Himself, her Titanic novel at that point. And she had the manuscript, what she had of it, in a carrier bag. And I believe it was the only copy, half of this book. And she lost it somewhere upstairs, apparently, looking for the lavvy. And there was a big hunt through the house for Beryl's manuscript in a carrier bag, which is weird. I've got that book in the next room in hardback from the mid-90s, and it looks like something from a different age, which it is. But I do remember Beryl being in a panic, having lost this carrier. Anyway, so these questions are going to go on forever, aren't they? That's me answering the first question. I think my favourite first edition, and I've said this before, would probably be Armistead Maupin's Maybe the Moon, which I've read a million times and is signed to me. Otherwise, probably Tony Warren's hardbacks. It'd be Full Steam Ahead, his final novel from the late 90s. I wish I'd taken them to get signed by him. I had tea with him, and he came to my birthday dinner once. And looking back, I should just have brought my books for him to sign. He would have written something scurrilous and awful in them, I'm sure. Or maybe my Ann Tyler hardbacks, first editions that came in the post from Chatto and Windus when we shared a publisher. And I was so proud. And I remember getting Ladder of Years in 95 and sitting on the train to the Lake District for a day out with a whole bunch of friends. And Ladder of Years had just arrived in the post, and it was an early copy before the actual publication day. Those are the best kinds of all, I think. To get a hardback in the post before it's even published, or a paperback before it's even published, just like Stuart's book. I'm up to 20 minutes and I've answered less than one question, but I have talked about Stuart, and I have rambled a bit and said thank you for your really lovely comments. And I'm going to post this tonight and maybe do another one of these tomorrow. Don't know what about. I think I'll do that thing again when I dip into different books from the to be read pile to prioritize them. I like dipping in and reading random bits to you. That's fun for me. Yeah, and I'll answer your other questions as well. But thank you again, and keep watching. I do have a Patreon page, which is just under my name on Patreon. It's easy to find, and it costs just pennies to go and watch other stuff by me and to read stuff by me. And it's very supportive when people go and subscribe to that. Otherwise, do click like and subscribe if you haven't already below. And that's it. I'll see you again soon in the next episode of this. Goodbye.